Hi everyone, my name is Hawwaa and today I will be presenting my classical guitar workshop. By the end of the session, I would have gone through a few classical pieces and then I would have demonstrated some techniques through my performance. We would have done a Q&A section too, so I hope you enjoy. Now I'll be analysing the piece called Fourth and we'll be having an overview of the techniques and other elements that are part of the piece. This piece was composed by Pierre Leriche, and the reason why the piece is called Fourth is because it's part of the 6 preludes that he composed. And personally, I would say this fourth is my favourite, just because it sounds really relaxing and it just has a nice effect on us whilst we're listening to it. And it's a contemporary piece, and it was wrought in the 19th century, so it'd be classed as a modern classical piece. So the first part of it is the chord progressions. So from the beginning of the piece, when it's played, the chords A7 and B7, the chords A7 and B7 are present, and usually the chord transition changes on every third beat of the bar. So the way it's played is that the chord is broken up, so there's some plucking involved. When you play the piece, you have to basically start from the 5th string, so you pluck that with your thumb, and then the 4th you use the index finger, and then for the last 2 notes it has to be played at the same time, so you just use your middle finger and ring finger to play it. As the piece progresses, you need to bring out the melody and continue with the same pattern. So, accents. The intro also includes accent notes, and the accents are played on the 2nd beat of the bar. And the accent notes basically highlights and emphasizes the note, which makes it stronger. And then free stroke is a hand technique. It doesn't matter whether left-handed or right-handed. You can still use this technique, and basically it's the way you produce the sound of the note, so you don't have to go full strength with the note. It's just enough volume to hear it, and the way it's played is just the finger motion. It goes round like that, so it's like din 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 din. That's what it is. And then rest stroke is the opposite, pretty much, where you play the note, but as you play it, you pull it back, so it's resting onto the next string. The dynamic of the piece is soft, because if you see the piece itself, it says on the top in French, "Le comme un rêve." I'm sure that's what it said, and it's French for slow like a dream. That's the sort of theme they want to bring across, which is understandable, but personally I would rather put more dynamics in it, and that would make it more interesting for the listeners. Another thing that I would like to mention is the structure of the 4th piece. It's not displayed on here, but I thought it'd be a great idea to mention it anyway. So the structure of the piece is ABA, so it's ternary, but the thing is, the piece is quite short, so if you wanted to extend it, you could then play and repeat the section from beginning, not beginning, but like the 2nd line of the music all the way through to the end, because if we were to play it, the duration would be around a minute, at most a minute, maybe a minute and a half, depending on the tempo of how you play it. Adelita. And the title Adelita, when I researched it, there were some theories about what it meant. And the first one some individuals thought is that it means it could be a lady's name. And then another theory was that it meant turtle. And I thought, that's a bit odd. So when I spoke to my classical guitar teacher about this, and he thinks it means like it's a lady's name. And I think that's most likely because I'm not sure who would want to talk about, like who would want to compose a piece about a turtle. And this piece was composed by Francisco Torrega, and he is one of the main role models in the classical guitar community because he is the modern father of the classical guitar due to his repertoire of techniques. So he brought some, like he invented some techniques that we use nowadays, and he's the main reason why the classical guitar can be performed as a soloist without any other instruments accompanying it. And personally, that is just amazing. And you know, as myself as a classical guitarist, adores that. And like, I feel like it's underrated nowadays, and I just love how, you know, we can still showcase its capabilities and its range and just how amazing it is to perform. So now we'll be talking about the techniques and elements of this piece. So first off, we have the time signature, which is 3/4. It's usually a common time signature for if people were to dance to it. And the tempo of it is 112 beats per minute, which is quite quick due to it being a mazurka dance, which is a Polish dance. But you can change the feel of the piece by slowing it down to romanticize it, which is how I perform the piece, because personally as a musician I love to play how the music is written, but I like to add a creative flair to it because I feel like it's good to showcase your ability to think outside the box. And the structure of it is ternary, so so it's A A B B A. A is just the first section of the piece, and the key of that is in E minor, and then the B part is in E major, which is quite contrasting because minor and major, they're opposites. And it's played back, but the reason why it's called ternary is because the A section does come back. That's why, not because of how many there is, just because the way it's structured. So the finger pattern that's used here is that the technique itself is much more difficult if we were to compare this to the fourth, because the fourth piece is like a grade 5 standard. The Adelita is a grade 6 standard. So if you were to listen to both at the same time, you could hear how it's much more like demanding in technique than the fourth piece. So accents are played on the second beat of the bar, and as I've said before, it highlights and emphasizes the note, which makes it stronger. It also includes other techniques such as molto tenuto, which means to hold the note for a longer duration so you can hear its full value. Legato, so legato in Spanish means to bind, and it does this by you pulling off the note or hammering on the note. And portamento is Italian for to carry, which means to slide the note onto the next. And then it also includes free stroke, rest stroke, and it has the dynamics. It mainly has 2 dynamics. The first one is for the first section is quite soft because it's a nice way to be brought into the piece, and it's nice to see how that's portrayed. And then for the B section of that, it's mainly loud. And then it also includes crescendos, which means it gradually gets louder, so it's building up to that moment, so it brings more momentum to the piece. So now I'll move on to the Q&A section. So, have you got any questions for me?
Yeah. What's the difference between a classical guitar and an acoustic guitar?
That's a good question. So, what's the difference between the classical and acoustic? Well, first off, the fretboard, because on the classical it's much wider, therefore making it more difficult to stretch if you need to go to a certain note or you need to use a certain chord. And then with the acoustic, the fretboard's much smaller, so then it's easier to play chords. And then another difference would be the strings. So with the classical guitar, it has nylon strings, so it's much easier to pluck the strings and do quick movements with them. Whereas the acoustic guitar, it has steel strings, and that has a better sound in a way, but it's much easier to strum the chords.
What's the process of learning how to play the guitar?
So the process, when I started learning how to play the classical guitar, I basically had to start off with some scales. So I'll show you one. So here's one of the first scales I ever played. It went like this. So it basically helps with hand coordination, and it helps you get used to your positioning and the movement of your fingers, which is really good for a beginner classical guitarist. The process of that is, as I continue to learn scales and arpeggios, I started to develop some technique, so then that led on to starting to learn some classical pieces, and the first one I ever played was Turkish dance, which I can play for you now if you'd like me to. Yeah? Okay, alright. Yeah, so for that I had to basically learn the simple chords. So it starts off with D minor, and and then it moves on to A minor, and then E minor, and then it goes back to A minor. So I had to develop my chord progression knowledge, and then as I went on, I did more complicated pieces. So from there to now is a big difference. But yeah, the tip I would give to people who want to do classical guitar is consistency and practice. Like, that's the main things you will need if you want to become a classical guitarist.
How many grades are there?
There are 8 grades, and there are different examination boards. So for myself, I use the LCM, which is the London College of Music, but there's also Trinity as well. But when you do graded exams, you don't have to start from grade 1, because when I started doing them, I started from grade 2. So you can skip a grade or 2. But then when I went from 2 to 5, it was alright. And then when I did grade 6, I was unable to do that because of COVID. So now I've moved on to grade 7, and yeah, the level of difficulty is much higher, but it's definitely worth it. Like, the hard work and dedication that you need to put into that is just unbelievable, because people assume that, oh well, you're grade 7, you know, you won't need much time to practice. Actually, that's incorrect. If anything, you need more practice, because there's more things to remember, and there's more things that you need to brush up on, like your technique, precision, and just everything is just, you know, harder, but it's definitely worth it, because it's something I love to do, and at the end of the day, I enjoy it. They assess you on like what skills you know and how well you can perform them. So it's based on how it flows well, and the tempo, if it's correct, and seeing if it's like cleanly played well. So they mark you on things like that, and they award up to 15 marks for that section. So all the sections, they add up to 100. Okay, so there's a technical side, and then you have to perform 3 pieces from the graded book in the syllabus. So you'll have to perform them, and then they're marked out of 20 each. And then they ask you questions about the pieces. So it can be anything about it. It can be what key signature is it in, what structure is it, and they can talk about the composer themselves. And usually I do quite well on that, I'm not gonna lie. I'm very good at like memorizing things. You have the sight reading section. Usually that's kind of my weakness, but you know what, everyone has weaknesses, and I think you just, as long as you keep working hard at it, you can achieve anything. And then there's the oral, so it's basically when you're listening, like they play something and then you see if you can tell the difference between notes and things like that. So they're the 5 sections, and it all adds up to 100. And in the past, I mainly got merits, but then grade 3, I smashed it and I got a distinction. And honestly, I was so proud. I got 88 out of 100, and even my classical guitar teacher said that that's one of the highest scores that any of the students has ever had. So yeah, dead impressed with that. So after grade 8, you can do diplomas, and then that means you can work your way up the ladder.
What career paths does it open up?
Well, people just assume that it's only something that can just be taught, so just being a teacher, but that's actually not correct. I would say that you can do so many things with it. You can perform at places, concerts, you can join orchestras, you can do busking, there's so many options out there. It's just, you need the right people to guide you there. And I feel like the classical guitar is quite underrated, but I feel like there should definitely be more awareness about this amazing instrument.